Today we'll be talking about quantifiers using your focus book, as well as articles using your grammar book. We use quantifiers to count nouns, and in order to choose the right quantifiers for our nouns, we have to know which ones are countable and which ones are uncountable. Take a look at the underlined nouns in exercise 2 and see if you can figure out which of them are countable nouns and which of them are uncountable nouns. You have 1 minute. Let's check the answers. Let's complete the notes in exercise 4. We use the quantifier many for countable nouns. Examples of countable nouns are chairs, desks, and sometimes we don't just add the letter s to plural. For example, person and people. We use the quantifier much for uncountable nouns. Examples are furniture, stationery, and staff. We can have many chairs, but all of them belong to the category of furniture. We never say furnitures. We can have many pens, but we only have stationery. We can have many people who work in an office, but all of them together will be the staff. And finally, there are some quantifiers that we can use for both countable and uncountable nouns. And for these quantifiers that can be applied to both, there's a trick to choosing which ones to use. A few, a little, and some are used when we are saying yes to something. For example, I have some money. For many, much, and any, we use them more in negative sentences or questions. For example, I haven't any money, or I don't have any money. Exercise 5. Choose the correct quantifiers for the countable and uncountable nouns that they relate to. You have 1 minute. Let's check the answers. For question 3, when you are choosing between some and any, you should be thinking about whether the meaning is affirmative or negative. It is a positive meaning because he is trying to help some of the children. If we are trying to say the opposite, that is, he chose not to help any of these children, then we would change the quantifier. For question 4, difference can be countable and uncountable. In this context, we're talking about difference as a kind of change, and change is an idea that is uncountable. But when we are listing the similarities and differences between two things, we have a clear list and we have a number of the differences. In this case, it is countable. You now have 30 seconds to complete exercise 6. Let's check the answers. Exercise 8. You have to rewrite the sentences using the negative form, but you have to pay attention whether the nouns are countable or uncountable, and then choose between not much and not many. You have 1 minute. Let's check the answers. Out of all these questions, there's one word that you just have to remember is uncountable. That is homework. Homework is always uncountable. You can have a lot of homework, you can have many pieces of homework, but you never have homeworks. If any day you come and tell me you have a lot of homeworks, you are asking for grammar practice on the countables and uncountables. For English grammar, articles mean a, an, the, or nothing. We use a or an for countable nouns in the singular form. We use them when we are mentioning these countable nouns for the first time. We use a for most of the nouns, and we use an for nouns that begin with a vowel. We use the definite article the to refer to things or people that we've already mentioned. If we've introduced the things or people, and we want to refer to these particular things or people again, we would use the article the. It is a similar idea to the case of defining relative clauses that we've talked about. Here are 3 sentences to help you understand the difference between a and the. If I just started talking and I haven't mentioned any books yet, I would say, I read a book called Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. If I go on talking and I want to tell you something about this book that I just mentioned to you, I can say the book or the story in this book describes a 12-year-old's adventure to retrieve Sue's stolen weapon. If I keep on talking and I still want to refer to this particular book, we still have a secret weapon that we use all the time to keep our writing or speaking concise. Instead of keep saying the story, the book about that and that, we can simply use the pronoun it. We usually leave out the article in 2 situations. Number 1, when we are referring to something in general. Since it's not specific, we won't use the article the. And since we're not counting specific numbers, there won't be a number or the singular a or an in front of the nouns. In this case, we would leave out the article and use the plural form of the nouns. For countable ones, we've dispelled them correctly. As for uncountable ones, we just leave them as they are. The second situation is when we are using names. We cannot count people, and we don't need to use the to point out which particular person I'm talking about because the name is clear enough. So these are the two situations in which we will not write an article in front of a noun. In Unit 30, we'll look at the use of articles with more concrete examples and some contexts. For the indefinite articles a or an, aside from counting, we also use them in fractions. For example, a third or a fifth of a cake. In terms of numbers, it would be 1/3, that's a third. 1/5, it's a fifth. We can also use it to talk about symptoms of a sickness. For example, a headache, a stomach ache, or a cold. But for diseases, we usually leave out the article because we won't be counting the disease. Influenza is a special case. So if you say I've got flu or a flu, you're referring to it in a general sense. If you want to specify a certain flu virus, then it is a virus. If you know there's a particular kind of influenza that's affecting the city this year, it would be the flu. Not just any flu, but the particular one that's affecting us this year. On a side note, when we want to express a sudden strong emotion, we sometimes say, "What a fantastic idea." But sometimes what gives us that strong emotion can be in plural. For example, "What beautiful eyes you have." We never say what a beautiful eye you have. So it still depends on what you are describing, and it's not always in the singular form. For the definite article the, we are still just being specific whenever we use it. For example, being specific about which group of people we are talking about in terms of nationality. We would say the French, the Swiss, to refer to all people of that nationality. When we want to describe a certain class of things, a certain group of things, again it's specific, we use the. When we're mentioning the shops that we usually go to, or because of background knowledge, I know which one I'm talking about without having to mention it, say the supermarket, the garden, places that you will definitely know which one I'm mentioning, we can use the without extra information. And finally, for some objects that we are familiar with, so once again we know which ones we're talking about, but also there are only one of them, say the sun, the sky, the moon. There's only one of them, so when we are mentioning them, we are definitely being specific. And when we are specific, we use the article the. Just like how we would leave out the article when we are referring to people with their names, it is the same case when we refer to the names of subjects, days, months, or countries and continents. As long as they are names that they are clear enough without having to count them or use the to point out which one we're talking about, we simply leave out the article. On a side note, we can use the word such to show emphasis without having to count or point out which ones we're talking about. In this case, we can also leave out the article and just say, "You are such noisy children." But we only use it with plural or uncountable nouns. If you want to use the singular form, say there's only one thing that is causing the strong emotion, you can say, "You are such a bright child." This is such a beautiful day.